right, so JavaScript the Weird Parts, lectures 30 through 37. And what's nice about this, and I'd like to say I planned it exactly, but it's the way the content flowed this week, is that in this series of lectures, objects and functions, object literals, JSON, pass by reference wasn't covered in the book, but it's good to know. So most of the content that you're going to get here is actually more of a fundamental concept to what we did in the book, the code up for last time. Okay, so so do your normal notes and then do your app 37 to indicate your code. Your so take notes where it's covering concepts, and then also do your app 37 and link it here. One new thing I'm going to have you do is I want you to create a folder, because I noticed I did this, so I'm going to now fix it, is create a folder in your Learn directory for your JS files and update your reference for all the files to this new folder location. So in there, I'll show you because I'm going to be on my Windows side. So here's what I mean down here. Right in here, create a new JS directory and then place your JS files in there. Okay, so in addition to, so that's first, right? Go over those concepts, and actually you can do this in whatever way you want, but now I'm actually going to do what I said last time after the code up. I said this is what I'm going to have you do. I actually did it myself last night, and it was so like, wow, I thought I got this whole idea of the module, and I did, but doing it really helped reinforce it. So let me just describe what you're going to do. I'm not going to show you the output because I actually want you to do this, and then we'll review mine in a future video. But review the data store module concept that was covered last week. Okay, so review that code. So what I mean by that is, wrong one, this code right here. Okay, so this data store JS file that was, and again, your documentation is really beneficial to understanding what this thing is doing. Okay, so first review that and then reflect upon the concepts you implemented in your develop 2. Okay, so like for me, it was the idea of the kitty match and, you know, tracking user clicks and having interaction based on that, right? So, but just thinking about, and it doesn't have to be something you implemented, it could be just something related, and I'll tell you at least what I'm going to use to give you an idea. So reflect on, right, review this, reflect on what you did, and now take something related to your app implementation and implement your app implementation and implement it in a module constructor prototype methods used in the data store. Okay, .js file. So you're going to do this same concept, use different names, use everything different, but use that same module where you fake the namespace by passing the window object into it, but you create something specific for yours, and something from the concept that you implemented and develop it too. For what I decided to use is I thought about it because one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to add, or one of the things I was going to do, and I may actually do it now anyway, is add a user sign up to where the user would sign up before they play, and that way I could track their user score. So what I decided to do was like a leaderboard to where I would create a module that would actually capture the username and the score, right, into an object. Okay, so that's what I decided to do. And again, you're taking a concept and just implement. Really what we're doing is we're reviewing to see how well you got the concepts in the data store. the module, the idea of creating the module, creating a namespace inside of that iffy, doing a constructor, right? Creating methods off the prototype, using the prototype to call the methods, right? So you're basically doing the same thing, but you're using something you've thought of and implementing it. Now, it's not wrong to go look at the data store, right? But the less you have to do it, the more you've understood how that concept works. Like you could look at the code and then reflect upon the thing you created, or the concept you're implementing into a module. And, but anyway, use namespace. I said this: variables and methods that are related to the concepts used, and develop it too for you. So I want you to actually, part of this work is actually creating variables and names that reflect, because that makes you actually think through how all those pieces go together. So first you do that, right? You create it, and then you also have to tell me, just like we had to interact with the data store module from the command, from the console and DevTools, in your new module, you also tell me the commands you would use to interact with your new module. Okay, so I've kind of thought about, once you do this, where I want you to include this file, but what I'll have you do is just add another script file to your JavaScript, the weird parts 37, right? So here's what I mean by that. So when you're in your 37 file at the bottom, right? So just include the file, your module file here, right? And then and also then in your module file, make sure documenting it is important, and then make sure at the end or somewhere you tell me the commands that I would need to do, because I will do it, to interact with your module that you've created here. Okay, and again, this is just like when they did, variable ds data store 1 equal new data store invocation, right? So that's creating that, and then how do you add? So in this case, right, so here's and these are creating objects, right, in here. In the future, instead of necessarily creating objects, because objects are, in this case, are not going to be stored after the computer, this is something we come up to later. We'll be writing them to databases, doing other higher level, not higher order, but other ways to save the data that you're doing. That's not the idea right now. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that in this, like get, right, remove, first get all, or remove, you can, again, for your specific thing, right, you could use this, or you could just say what you would do in comments, like in here and get, right? Actually, you have to, because I want to be able to interact with it. But you could also think about, storing that into some kind of database, because that's coming. So no, I'm sorry, let me back up. You do actually have to do this, because I want to actually be able to interact with it, right? And you wouldn't necessarily call it data, you'd call it whatever is specific, right? And for yours, so for, again, the idea of my leaderboard, right? So I would call it something different. And again, the reason I'm doing that is to help you see how well you grasp these concepts. And because they're covered, so there's definitely an overlap. The JavaScript, the weird parts, is going to give you more of that fundamental knowledge. The code up that we did with Big Nerd Ranch was a bit more advanced, but it gave you the step-by-step. So now we're combining with a little more concepts, and now with a little distance away from doing the work that you did last week is something to actually make you do it in your own way. Because I've been thinking about our next Develop It series and what I want us to do in that. And so this is kind of my way to start transitioning into thinking about that. Because there's one thought that I had, which is maybe taking what you've started. Matter of fact, actually, we'll hold this. I'm going to have you give me some feedback, because my two ways of thinking here is to actually maybe allow you to continue the development that you've already started in this module object methods concept, or really this module pattern. So I'm gonna give that some thought, and we'll talk about that in our next one, which in this case, right, is our next code up. So this is week 9 that we're talking about here. This is our next code up. And just FYI, if you haven't heard me say it, I'm going to be traveling October 12th through the 16th. So just if you need, if you need to talk to me, I'll be on campus the 11th, then I'll be back on the 17th. Okay, that's what I'm trying to work ahead here. All right, hope that anyway, I'd be interested to hear what happened, because it really did, in my brain, I had to kind of twist it around, and really it helped me again get a new level of understanding of this module pattern. All right, talk to you later. Bye.